Well, ladies and gentlemen, it's that time again. October Webbot report. Quite a bit in here, more than I would have expected about silver and its price rise. I'm going to start off with a little bit of the Terra entity, Global Pop, USA Pop, etc., and then go right into the markets part. Um, Mostly focused on silver, actually. Again, I can't read you this whole report. Somebody actually purchased this report and gave it to me as a present. Thank you. Um, my usual disclaimer for any new subscribers. I've been following the Webbot project for years. It has been spooky accurate many times, sometimes not, sometimes very accurate, just the date has come and gone, sometimes quite significantly come and gone, but then the event happens spectacularly. If you hear me say a date or a month or a time and it seems like, oh, it's next month or this year or whatever, understand, maybe it is, maybe it isn't, but the information about what it is what's important. Having said that, this silver rise is coming to a planet near you, allegedly, according to this Redbot report. We got to wait and see. Is it right now, or is this going to be one of the ones where it gets next year? I don't know, but I think we're going to find out. So on with it. Yet more data sets for flooding in both intense and short periods are accruing within the data. These sets are broad, deep, and have great variance of geographic references. The many sets for flooding include new words that will have to be created to describe these new forms of floods, where all the violence of a flash flood occurs so swiftly as to be almost the equivalent of a tornado in water eating its way through urban landscape. Some of the newer minor supporting sets are showing that an association between geoengineering or climate engineering, chemtrails, etc., and these new storm monsters will begin to gain traction among the populace, such that in the days following several instances of mega floods eat urban environment, there will be linguistic floods, language floods, if you will, on the internet discussing the correlation between storm and chemtrails and/or HARP. While such language already exists in abundance, the data sets are indicating that these next few occurrences will propel the idea into a crossing of the chasm into the lower level of the mass mainstream consciousness. This transition has very deep and far-reaching consequences with longer-term values accruing that have 5 generations span, approximately 120 years. Next paragraph that I put in here. And again, sometimes that'll be the end of a paragraph, and I may have skipped a page or two and then started over or started the next paragraph, so it doesn't necessarily go right in line with whatever the previous paragraph was. The most recent processing has brought out sets for yet more plant species extinctions. Some of these are being shown as being food crops. Fortunately for humanity, these food crops going bad mostly, not all, but mostly, appear to be genetically modified foods that fail to thrive. However, some of the unique plants or crops are going to be threatened. There are a number of sets for coffee and chocolate as being exposed to extinction. These sets are extensively cross-linked over to the solar change, or formerly sun disease, dataset. The Ice Age, aka climate change, subsets continue to grow supporting sets for modifiers to the climate being man-made. In these sets, the data is referencing the chemtrails or geoengineering via airplanes at atmospheric and atmospheric modification. These sets have details that show an exposure of complicity by U.S. Air Force will be causing problems, including murders/suicides through a swath of officialdom, mostly within Washington, D.C. These sets are showing that public rejection of appeals to support spraying will be an instant reaction when the funding ceases and the programs are made public in order to gain further financing. So I could see it where financing says we can't afford to pay for these planes to keep spraying up the atmosphere. And then some things happen on Earth, and they have to say, well, let's tell the people the truth now. Yes, in fact, chemtrails are real. We've been doing it for decades, and as you can see, looking around us, weather problems, we need to continue doing it. Now that it's in the public eye, they'll hope that we'll beg our Congress and rotten politicians to allow them to continue going back up there and spraying that stuff so that they can help slow down or fix this climate problem. That's what I'm interpreting here. In addition to the chemtrails component to the Ice Age story within the datasets, we have both Terra entity and the Space Goat's Fart entity with very fast growing sets for climate alterations. These are specifically not about weather, which is the shorter term manifestations of climate. The new growth includes not only strange snow, new patterns and places, but also ice storms in near tropical regions that will be felt as hugely devastating by the local humans. The ice storms are suggested to cause widespread crop and property damage. These ice storms also lead to severe flooding episodes. In some cases, the ice may take months to melt, where in others it goes the next day. So the data would have a near tropical environment receiving actual tons of water in the form of ice one day that turns to water again overnight in floods. Results, I guess, where none have been, which results in basically a place that has not been having flooding happening for centuries. Explosive sinkholes. These are where sinkholes allow water to contact really hot, deep stuff inside the hole. The resulting steam explosions are described as damage causing to infrastructure on several continents. The most interesting sinkhole from a woo-woo perspective will be one that occurs in Alaska and shows something within the earth. What that something is remains to be seen, but it should be interesting. Global pop entity. The data sets are showing that the diaspora afflicting Europe will shift over the course of only very few months into an invasion that has both proportions and direction, that the structures of government will be threatened both by the invasion of refugees and the breakdown of the control structures internal to government. Religion as a problem develops as a huge meme across all of Northern Hemisphere in 2016 and through to 2029. It is most concentrated in Europe initially, and in early 2016, the linguistics are forecasting the first in a long series of public debates, reflected in the media, over religion as a global problem and how to learn to live without it. Within many of these sets are cross-link aspects slash attributes sets for the 300 families who control the planet and their sudden appearance in the center of the religion as problem debate in Europe. These sets suggest that the 300 families will see themselves faced with disaster in Europe and publicly react in unison. There will be some language that they only do so to protect themselves, abandon the people, from this developing disaster. Following the lead of the Tavistock Institute's laws in other countries, most notably English speaking or controlled, the data suggests that sudden and brutal, from the viewpoint of the population, new laws denying social contact and social services for persons not vaccinated will be proposed in many of the areas of Europe. These new laws are part of a global agenda, and in this case, the data sets are indicating that they will be using the mass migration or diaspora as a reason to force these laws into place. Note that this was originally forecast in 2006, if memory serves, he says, by the data, and will, after this trial run in the Eurozone, be brought to American cities as well. The reason cited in the USA will also be the unchecked immigration, which will be cited as a disease risk Thus, the need for the law saying you will not be able to even ask for government services unless you have your vac pack, if you will, or vaccination packet, with you to prove your vaccinated status. In some of these sets, there are new supporting sets indicating that Germany and France will prove to be real problems for the powers that be as they try to shove this agenda forward. So much problem that the powers that be are shown as sending Pope on a vaccine sales trip through those countries. Not that it helps their cause at all. The data sets show that a successful resistance effort to the vaccines by Muslim refugees based on two mutually supporting true rumors that pork genes are in the mix and that Jews own the pharmaceutical industry will spur a new phenomenon which will be labeled as Vax Muslims, in which people claim to be converts in order to not have to take the vaccinations. This will lead to the muddying of huge numbers of government records over several years. Also involving a European center to a global story, the data sets are pointing toward a war by the population with CERN over the Large Hadron Collider. This war is going to be promoted or prompted by electrical failure along or on the French coast, question mark, that will lead to both French Navy military and civilian transportation impacts of a large enough magnitude that lead to a populist movement against the Large Hadron Collider to take to the streets. The data shows that this movement grows over time to include other countries, including Switzerland and Germany. In addition to power problems in both France and Switzerland, this latter one then cascades over to southern Germany. The data is pointing toward a developing association between the Large Hadron Collider operation and extremely bad weather. The data shows that this meme will be dismissed initially, but it'll keep returning to consideration to the point that some representative of the Large Hadron Collider or CERN will end up crying out in desperation about the issue at a public event. Further connections to developing series of earthquakes in China will also be causing public outcry against the LHC, Large Hadron Collider. In several sets, we have data suggesting that the Chinese government will begin to express official concern about the LHC and the price the Chinese people are paying for its operation. Next, USA Pop. New education sites, not schools, longer term data for a new form of education on how to do stuff for kids who don't know how to read or do other stuff at all. The data would suggest that in the latter part of 2019 or so, a number of new shop schools will appear. Notice that date, 2019. And again, if this is accurate with the date, but it's definitely in the future. These new shop schools will appear in the USA with an intent to graduate new numbers of skilled builders, both in old school bricks and mortar as well as new electrics tech. The USA Pop has gained supporting sets, gained sets supporting the idea of free range or gypsy or bandit will be joined to mining both gold and silver and will show up in the language of the mainstream media and alternative press over the second half, our timing projection, of 2016. So again, he thinks it should be 2016, second half. The specific appellation used will depend on the location, but in all cases, the free range or gypsy miner, if you will be someone going out after metals as a freelance resource extractor. The data is describing these freelance extractors as being involved in a number of incidents involving authorities in several regions in the USA over late 2015 and through the first half of 2016. These incidents will be broadly confrontational, though a few may involve the rescue word also being present. Of course, the individuals involved will be entirely driven by economic desperation. In other words, I don't have a job, can't have a job, try to find one, can't get one, unemployment's run out, I got to do something, I'm going to go be a freelance gold and silver miner, essentially is what this is saying. Not everybody's going to do that, but it's what it's talking about. The dubious results showing up in the mainstream media will be an approximate trigger to tens of thousands of new freelance extractors going out prospecting. There will be many incidents citing minor on minor violence. Not minor as a young child, minor as in a gold miner. Make sure I clarify that. The USA will not be the only country, nor North America the only continent, on which freelance extractors start up business in 2015, it says here. So we're talking maybe at the end of the year. I mean, we're practically there. Many crosslinks point to degrading and failing enforcement of mining regulations and rules by government over the next 3 years as their financial support fails as being the enabler for this new era of endeavor. Further sets indicate a thriving weights and measures industry of buyers and aggregators for the extracted resources will be developing over late 2016 through to mid 2020s. Neocons get their just desserts, as the data suggests that from early 2016 through the rest of the bizarre election cycle season, the neocons and slash neoliberals will be on the receiving end of beatings, flying crap, thrown waste slash excrement slash material, as many within their power structures react to the shock of the sudden death of the dollar, perceived American empire. Much of these new linguistic sets are forecasting a ramping up of this language in February 2016. These sets suggest that many of the professional political classes, including both elected and appointed officials, will be resigning in what will seem to be a strange kind of disease of public life. These episodes of both beatings and resignations are showing as peaking in mid-spring and mid-fall of 2016 Northern Hemisphere. The data sets are pointing toward a period that may be starting as early as this fall, in which there is a building wave of bankruptcies in USA corporations such that a follow-on wave of unemployment begins in the USA. These sets include cross-links to derivatives failure in the markets entity in which hundreds of corporations are instantly bankrupt. These sets are showing a failure of inventories in the supply chain will be occurring within days of a lockup or contention between two large banks. This trigger event is showed as an unintended consequence of an automation collision. The effect is a huge impact on the population as the wave of layoffs and firings is very rapid and fierce. The datasets are continuing to point to massive crashing employment, which is supported by even more layoffs and bankruptcies lead to firings language. These new sets are suggesting that events of an unknown type will be a trigger or proximate cause for corporation bankruptcies to reach unprecedented levels in the year 2016. The data sets show that bankruptcies will be the subject of global economic press stories. These new layoffs and firings are also within sets that go to the fracturing of the political system itself. The data sets are showing that mobs of unemployed students will be roaming resorts and luxury centers for leisure during spring break 2016. Many of these sets are going to the idea of travel becoming a real cost for anyone leaving the USA and having to deal with currencies and political problems. The data sets also show that the students will flock to local resorts with very sad consequences for all concerned in most of these new rage sites. Data sets are indicating many new videos showing police versus crowds of young people. Some of these new sets are going to the idea of stranded crowds of students who end up encamped in various resorts and airports as a result of continuing extremely bad weather throughout 2016. The cross-linked sets to the terror entity are also in the supporting chain of sets forecast a year ago for failed colleges that will shutter/close while most students are gone on break. These sets were the ones about small gangs of students being trapped by circumstances, either economic or weather or both, in nearly deserted college campuses and the impact of their stories on social media. There are data sets showing that the mobs/crowds of unemployed recently fired will be using inventive techniques to express their displeasure. Some of these sets point to cement coats for limos and other executives' vehicles, and other and overturned private airplanes, and spontaneous parties at high-priced retreats belonging to corporations, which will be planned, announced, and promoted by social media. In the case of the parties, there are supporting sets going to the idea that mainstream media will be calling it malicious partying or some variant when the first of these incidents occur. The data suggests that we can expect a series of stories in the mainstream media over the next few years here in the USA Pop that will focus on the extreme nature of the efforts being undertaken by celebrities, most focusing on Hollywood initially, but spreading rapidly across the continent to learn and become fluent in Chinese. These data sets are containing references to no speak Chinese, no work being the new theme among casting and other human resource placement firms. These data sets are forecasting that major efforts will be put into private lessons in all manner of devices for learning by the work-hungry celebrities. Further sets are continuing the idea that if you are not known in China, you are merely local talent. Both Hong Kong and Singapore, new developing film and recreational video gaming industry there, will benefit from the celebrity diaspora to China. See China Pop for more info. I skipped over China Pop, but I did include one little piece of China and Arctic. Contracts with Russian interests are showing as bringing China into tight coordination with India due to research being done by the Russians, which apparently involves Indian corporation technology. The data sets are showing that China and India will, over the next 15 years, develop a real presence in the Arctic in spite of neither having Arctic borders. Curiously, the data keeps referencing old Bombay and new electrics as being involved in very exciting Arctic discoveries over the next 3 years. These data sets are cross-linked over to the Space Goats Farts entity, which means outer space entity, and also over the markets entity where they terminate in silver sets. China and sucking energy/money from the cabal bastards. Strange days need strange ways, and late in 2015, the forecast is for Hollywood celebrities to be migrating to China. Much of these new supporting sets are related to the shift in relative purchasing power of currencies that will make China the global entertainment center for demand and funding. The Chinese gaming industry's domination of online gaming is indicated to cause a global move towards simplified Chinese as the standard language by late 2028. The data is also showing that Chinese demand for American movie stars will be a large linguistic wave from 2016 through 2020 that is showing us producing many stories about Qingdao being the new center of the universe as coastal entertainment celebs of all nationalities. As may be expected, many of the new mainstream media stories in USA will be less than flattering given the bombastic tones of the failing empire's propaganda machine during these next 4 years. Other related supporting subsets show a nascent marine/ocean explorer wave beginning in concert with the shift of the planetary movie industry. This is also coincident with the beginning of the first of China's Arctic initiatives. The new supporting sets are going to the idea that weights and measures will be set by China specifically within the precious metals markets and currencies exchange rates. Sets within these supporting sets are indicating that Chinese adoption of Bitcoin will be pressuring Russian officialdom to reconsider their stance. New sets here indicate a hardline stance that is going to crack later rather than soften. Markets entity. And this is the final piece I'm going to discuss. 2 little pages here. The largest new sets for markets entity, and this isn't the full thing. Again, I pick and choose what I want to report on. If you want to know what the full Webart report has, and there's stuff in here that I wish I could just read the whole thing to you. I'm not going to do that. It's not fair. So if you want it, as I always say, go buy it from Cliff High's his website, halfpasthuman.com. Markets entity. The largest new sets for markets entity now are growing under the fear and frightened descriptors. Many of these new supporting sets are coming in under major descriptors of lockup, contention, and lawsuit. New supporting sets are accruing that begin in the linguistics about careless gossip and clueless discussions. And he says that they were being recorded, ? And other sets for loose words that will be out and about to cause trouble. Or not to, but and cause trouble. The trouble includes inciting fear and kicking loose the bowels of many of the trader community, as in markets, trading, etc., trader community. There are sets for the markets which come in over the course of October for loosening one's head and running around panicking. Further sets go to hyperventilation and collapse due to poor breathing. Further sets supporting this meme to go to perceived wealth being converted into a cloud that drifts away. Other sets, much more clear and string together to explicitly state, take precautions against calamity. Some of these sets have interconnected supporting sets for dollar fading, causing pressures USA military both inside and outside the country, and for sets going to dollar disaster. It is worth noting that the pressures on USA military sets are also either directly held or cross-linked over to USA Pop, where they terminate in the sets for USA military bases abandoned, soldiers return from around planets. These sets in their turn have long held that dollar death would bring about conditions where local fundraisers would be needed needed in occupied countries to pay for repatriation of USA military personnel back home. Can you imagine? GoFundMe campaign. My poor son or daughter, they're stuck in another country and they won't take our dollar and even convert it to their currency so they can get on a plane and come back. GoFundMe campaign to get in this country's currency, or some others, Kickstarter.com. I mean, come on. Wow. And I remember the first time I read about this, and it has to be at least 3 years ago now, maybe longer, about exactly what I just said. This just hasn't gone away. It's in the report still. It's going to happen. New sets for crumbling, failing/yielding markets are in accretion patterns that are going to a period of the indexes of all debt markets turning into a mud brick wall sagging into mud from which it came. Repetitious new sets for disaster are appearing throughout all the major supporting sets for the markets entity. Keeping in mind, everything I'm going to finish this with is about the markets. These new sets, including a worrying occurrence of bad influences. The bad influences are indicated to be sweeping away trades and accounting rules. These bad influences are also within the supporting sets for covert banking mechanisms that will become spotlighted by the exposed lies. These sets are also bringing along sets for press crash in the sense of the mainstream media being struck down by facts that will be pouring out of a hack, he says, question mark, pouring out of, says, of a hack, of a central bank, maybe the Fed, he says. The media figures involved are going to be indicated to be rendered destitute, and this will be reported upon by the alternative media. These sets are showing that the USA markets will be rocked by instability as these facts of current history are made public. A few detail sets are showing that flooding in New York City will be coincident with a round of commodities default. And I'm going to talk about that in a second because I've had a strong stance about COMEX default never happening. I don't see it happening. And that's not what this is necessarily saying, but if it is a commodities default, matter of fact, let's go ahead and discuss it now. I don't want to come back to it. A few detail sets are showing that flooding in New York City will be coincident with a round of commodities default. These sets are showing as crashing against the dollar. These sets are also tied into the supporting chains for fear and frightened descriptor sets. These supporting sets include their own support for liquidity demands, internal to US and external, that will be draining veins of commerce. These sets are also indicating that capital constraints will be forcing a wave of bankruptcies. These in turn will force such a huge wave of layoffs or firings that government is forced to react publicly. So is this going to be something where a round of commodities default takes place because companies like Glencore, Trafigura used said commodities that they thought they owned or currently did own and was letting the COMEX use to put out these fires, so to speak, to, when people demand delivery of the metals that they don't have, um, and all of a sudden that metal's been pledged for lending in the future, and now you've seen recently with Glencore and Trafigura, they're pretty much toast. And I'm sure all the people who lent them their forward financing are saying this was pledged on your commodities, not necessarily gold and silver only, but different commodities. We need that collateral now that you failed. They then go grab it from COMEX. We need this urgently to give to them. This is just a scenario that's it's not even it's a simple thought, put it that way, that where I could see something like this happening. But I've always stood by and said, I just cannot see the club letting the COMEX default. That would be a conspiracy theorist dream of a lifetime to say, we told you so. So bad. And history shows us that the club likes to destroy stuff rather than tell you what was really happening. Before anything's about to be found out, they destroyed it. Look at the Twin Towers. Look at Building 7. All that financial investigative material was in Building 7. Not anymore, because it collapsed on 9/11, even though it wasn't hit by a plane. Just saying. So that's how they usually do stuff. My opinion was that there's no way they'll let the COMEX default. They'll just have a terrorist attack or a cyber attack, took the market down, and some other excuse. However, I'm not sure what this means. A few detail sets are showing that the flooding in New York City will be coincident. So look for flooding. That'll be a marker, if you will, with to be coincident with a round of commodities default. Now, let me stop and give you another view of this. That doesn't necessarily even mean at all that we're talking about the COMEX defaulting. This could strictly be players like Glencore and Trafigura. They default on those commodities that when the people who lent them that forward financing, they have to pledge something to get that. Oh, here's our commodities on paper. And should we fail, we'll give you the collateral. What if they never had the collateral? That would make this true. A few detail sets are showing that flooding within New York City will be coincident with a round of commodities default. Glencore and or Trafigura or another entity could in fact default on promised commodities to someone else, not necessarily the COMEX. So I just want to clear that up. Back on track. A new trend showing up in the silver sets will within the monetary side, not industrial, of the data is a flow to dishoarding. These sets are within the supporting chain for the new aggregation network that will spring up globally through primarily in the West, not through, though primarily in the West. These new sets are suggesting that there will be many inducements to unload old silver, any silver, into a system that is sucked dry by silver demand. The data shows that a minor wave of dishoarding does take place as the strength of the silver price rising gets into a series of steps which gain public attention. Continued support exists for $100 per ounce silver by mid 2016. The expected dishoarding does not take place as the currencies are showing as failing too fast to risk conversion for most silver holders. There are sets indicating that the market in silver does ease slightly as the price reaches the $100 plus level, but only for a brief few months. The market entity has transitional elements rising as the leading supporting sets for October and most of November 2015. These supporting sets, in their turn, are supported by transforming process/dynamic at either the primary, secondary, or tertiary position. Let me repeat for clarity. The markets globally for the rest of October and most of November 2015 are being best described by the data as being in a period of transitional elements rising. Each of these three descriptors are themselves holding transforming process or transforming dynamic in their primary, secondary, or tertiary supporting position. This is a linguistic lineup that is quite rare. And similar situation within model space has only existed once before, and this was prior to the 2008 death of the system language, which began showing up in early 2007 reports, WebArt reports. In our new sets, the linguistic structures for the transitional elements include details showing that upending or opening without results/empty cans/coffers are going to be causing a great many old men to growl in their soup. These linguistics are in support of the transitioning into unknown that is showing as being underway now, but will gather strength and internet visibility over the rest of October and November. The idea is that paper debt markets are being upended or turned over or flipped upside down, such that a net negative result will be achieved in spite of never before seen levels of financial engineering/criminalities. So a net negative result will be achieved in spite of never before seen levels of financial engineering/criminality. The data sets are accruing more supporting sets for old men in their offices as sunsets, growling at the difficulty within the markets. Many of these sets are for officialdom in some form. The data sets are suggesting that the conditions within the global debt markets through to the last week of November are going to be the cause of much growling, fretting, and harsh brows, like eyebrows/bad digestion within high level finance and high level government. The primary reason showing is directly tied to the pressures for rising silver prices. The November focus sets have a peak of forecast occurrence in the third week. At that time, the data sets then gain bursts of clusters of new sets for a sudden, large, as in huge, big, giant, are all in their data sets, those words, spike in the price of silver. Gold is also within these sets, but is at a much lower level of emotional sums for that third week. These price spike data sets are forecasting for the rise in the currency's price of silver to take a number of weeks, perhaps two, maybe a bit into the third week, prior to seeing the plateau that the spike will produce. These sets are then cross-linked over to the silver dishoarding and the rising groups slash businesses of aggregation of silver upwards. There is a juxtaposition of the silver dishoarding language at the same time as we have rising sets for panic to buy silver. These latter sets are in no way impacted by the silver dishoarding sets, and the interpretation has to be that the panic will overwhelm the dishoarding. These data sets for the panic to own or buy silver also have connections to the gold sets, but primarily we are looking at a global silver purchasing phenomenon. These sets start to accrue in large amounts as model space is moved through early November around the 12th and grow through the rest of the month until mid-December, when the emotional energy for the sets wanes a bit until early 2016. There are numerous extensive crosslinks between the panic to buy slash find silver and the Space Goats Farts entity, where many of the links terminate in weapons and breakaway civilization subsets. Continuing aspect slash attribute sets gain in support of the insurance. This is the final piece, little tiny thing here. Continuing aspect attribute sets gain in support of the insurance industry dry heaves or hacks up a hairball. These sets are referring to a global insurance claim or claims that involved a deep derivative structure. These sets may well be involved in currently unfolding Glencore meets reality events. So a spate of insurance company failures will be coming to a globe near you. This would be no different. I gave an example of this exact same thing the other day, and I said, imagine this. Because all these financial institutions with their derivatives and all this crap, they're so leveraged that one of a decent sized player fails, they all fail. Because this guy insurance, that one, he failed, he can't pay the insurance. Now he failed, he can't pay the insurance. It's just daisy chain. Imagine everybody on your way to work. I said this the other day. I'll use the same example. On your way to work, the same way you go every single day, every time you turned a street corner, assuming you turned, a street at least several times in your route to work or route to work, and each and every turn there was an accident. The car was totaled. Not an accident. The car was absolutely totaled. And it was a kind of an expensive car. Each turn you make, an expensive car has been totaled. And this is happening for everybody that goes to work that day, no matter where you are. Keeping in mind how many thousands of cars did not get into an accident that day. Only one per street you turned on. How many thousands of cars didn't get in an accident? It doesn't matter, because that's still a small percentage of the cars that did get in an accident, right? That little percentage of cars is enough to cause the insurance companies that insured those people to go bankrupt. They don't have the cash funds to deal with that many claims simultaneously. Keyword, that many claims simultaneously. And when the banking and finance system goes down, the sheer number of institutions that will crumble, as I said, will just literally go bankrupt just from derivative losses alone. Boom, see you out of here. And then the claims that have to be made to the insurance, the AIG stuff. Remember that? We had to bail out AIG so AIG could bail out the big banks. Because if they didn't, the big banks wouldn't have got their insurance claim. They wouldn't have been able to pay that guy. That guy wouldn't have paid that guy. So AIG was bailed out. Who are they going to bail out this time? It's not just going to be a single entity. AIG needs to be bailed out. Oh no. That same example I just gave you, Geico Insurance, State Farm, Allstate, these are all insurance companies for all different people, and there'll be massive claims in the little analogy. So I'm seeing this and saying to myself, all these years I've been waiting, thought, raised my hand first in line, thought things would have been here a little bit quicker, thought the price of precious metals would have been higher quicker than what they're turning out to be. Yet I still see the writing on the wall. It still makes sense. It's all there. So I know it's coming. But thinking, man, it sure has dragged on. So I read this Webbot report. My first instinct is, come on, it ain't happening this November. I'd have been through way too many Novembers to think that now all of a sudden silver's going to skyrocket. However, and keep in mind, Webbot's, what if it's next November and the Webbot up third week in November, boom, 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 oh, $100 silver, whatever. Well, he did say November, and I know the Webbot, it's data that he has to interpret. Cliff does. Dates can come and go, etc. So I'm going to tell you right now, I am not under any circumstances holding my breath that silver's going to go crazy. But I will tell you, as I did the other day, I'll repeat it. Cliff High emailed me like the first or second day of October. I think it was the first. We're in today, right now is the 11th, and tomorrow I'll be doing this video, so that'll be the 12th. I mean, I'll be uploading it. So he said to me, watch metals, particularly silver, ode to joy and this and that. I'm like, what are you talking about? What do you mean? Within a couple days, silver makes a huge move up, boom, blows through where it was at. A couple days later, goes up again. Of course, the day after that, it came back down, but then the next day, boom, comes back up again. If I look at a percentage of the move that silver made in that week, it was pretty significant. I thought, holy crap, he emailed me this in advance. So maybe this report will be spot on. And maybe we're about to see some fireworks in the silver market. Only time will tell, right? Guess we're going to have to wait and see, I suppose.